Hey everybody, I unfortunately had to change studios because we're doing construction where I normally film these at. So if you hear anything in the background, it's just the construction workers. Some of us still do unfortunately have to, go to work. Life moves on. But during this time, a lot of people are quarantined in and you don't know what to watch. And there are a ton of streaming services, but searching through all of them to find out what's on what, it can be so time consuming that at that point you just end up giving up and watching The Office for the millionth time in a row. Nothing wrong with that. But I've already put out 2 videos. The first is what I think you might want to watch on HBO. The second is Amazon Prime. This time I will tackle Showtime. Now, before I get into what I think you guys might watch, I'm going to beg you guys to please subscribe to the channel. I need 1,000 subscribers to end up getting paid by YouTube, so I don't have 1,000 subscribers. I would like to get 1,000 subscribers. That starts with you. If you don't subscribe, just click a button, and that would help me out a great deal. There is a share button for a reason, by the way, so if you know somebody that doesn't know what to watch in this horrible time of need, hit a share button and share that with the person in your life who needs this the most. And then also, if you like hearing the sounds of my sultry voice, I do have a podcast called Scene Invaders. If you search Scene Invaders on the, wherever you get your podcast, Stitcher, Apple, Spotify, you'll find us. We talk about movies and TV shows and stuff and things that we're watching and whatnot. But right now, we're going to focus on what is available on Showtime. All of these streaming services have a lot of stuff on it, and a lot of it is pure shit. Now, if I don't mention something, it's either because I just haven't seen it, or 2, saw it and I thought it sucked. In the description of this video, I will post the Twitter account that you can tweet at me and see, hey, did you watch this? Have you seen it, or did you just not like it? And I will get back to you if there's something that I don't mention that you do end up finding on Showtime. I normally would say just comment in the comment section, but people are mean on the comment section. Not like they're nicer on Twitter, but I usually just stay away from the comment section because people like to hide behind their keyboards and be keyboard warriors. So if you do want to personally reach out, hit up that Twitter account. You can tweet at me for any of them, the HBO one or the Amazon Prime one. Hey, have you seen this? And I'll give you my opinion on it if I've seen it, and whether I liked it or not, and why I would say you should skip it. So the first movie that I will focus on for Showtime is the movie Green Book. I loved Green Book. It won the Oscar for Best Picture that year under a lot of what's the best way I can describe this? Protest from one person in particular named Spike Lee. But I love this movie. It's a true story about this guy from New York who's very Italian, who ends up driving around this upper crusty piano player who is the exact opposite of him in every way, played by Mahershala Ali. The dynamic between Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen in this movie is tremendous. If you haven't seen it, it's a really, really good true story. I adored it. Next movie is Adrift. Some of these movies I will clarify by saying not the best movie, but hey, maybe worth watching. Adrift is that movie. I always find these movies, though, fascinating. These true stories of, shit, we're out in the middle of the ocean. What do we do? How do we survive? And you don't really know if they survive and somebody found their body or what. And normally, yeah, they do survive, but it's interesting of how they were able to handle the scenario of we are in the middle of literally nowhere. We don't know where we are. We're hoping to get found. And the survival story, I always find them fascinating. This is no different. It does have Shailene Woodley in it. Normally that will keep me away from a movie, but I persevered through this one. And it wasn't amazing. It wasn't life-changing. It didn't reinvent the wheel, but it was decent. It's worth watching. American History X is a movie that truly is life-changing, though. It is a story of a neo-Nazi who ends up going to prison and ends up befriending a black inmate. Reluctantly, he ends up becoming friends with him, and he slowly realizes that everything he did in his life, none of it's been good. Everything's been terrible because of the choices he's made and the people he's associated with. And it's a good look at the mistakes you make and trying to save those from making the same mistake. American History X is one of the most powerful movies I've ever seen. It's got some pretty hard scenes in it, but Edward Norton is absolutely amazing in this. He's an incredible actor. I think this is his best movie he's ever done. Airplane. To get off a serious topic of American History X, Airplane is the opposite of that. Absolutely hysterical. Still holds up. The jokes, Leslie Nielsen, everything about Airplane still holds up. If you haven't seen it, if you're a comedy fan, do yourself a favor. Watch this movie. Some of you out there will be like, who hasn't seen Airplane? There's a lot of popular movies out there that I personally have not seen. Airplane, though, I have seen. It is really, really good. If you haven't seen it, make sure to watch that movie. Blue Streak. Blue Streak was a Martin Lawrence movie during his heyday of the TV show the TV show Martin. But he plays a cop. It's a good comedy. He's hysterical in it. So if you like Martin Lawrence, if you like the TV show Martin, if you've liked him in the Bad Boys franchise, Blue Streak is a nice little gem on Showtime that I think you will enjoy. Captive State was actually the most recent movie I've watched. And this is set in a world where aliens have come down and really taken over our planet and are using our resources. And the government reluctantly are letting them do it while acting like that dog in the burning building saying this is fine. But there are people out there who want to take the country back and try to defeat the aliens. This is a science fiction movie, and if you don't like science fiction movies, you're not going to enjoy this. But if you are into movies like Independence Day and I can't think of any other science fiction movies out there, but if you're into science fiction, you will like this movie. I will say, there were many parts in this movie where I go, they better explain this shit, or else I'm going to be pissed off, because they're just glossing over this, acting like I'm supposed to know what this means, what that means. And at the end of it, they wrap everything up into a nice little bow. They explain everything, and it ended up saving the movie for me. But I did enjoy it. I think it's worth checking out. The next movie is Days of Thunder. This is Tom Cruise in a NASCAR in the early 90s with Nicole Kidman. They actually met on this movie, ended up getting married, and have since divorced. It's terrible when that happens. You know, love can't persevere always. But it's a good movie. You don't have to like NASCAR to like this movie, though. It's a good sports movie, and I enjoyed it, although if you're not going to want to watch it because of the NASCAR thing, I understand it. But it's a decent movie to check out if you're a sports fan and you want to watch something with your wife, or if you're a girl and you want to watch something with your husband or boyfriend or whatever, vice versa. I think this is a good movie that has both for everybody, has the love story, but also has the sports angle as well. It is old. It's made in the early 90s, and it definitely shows that, but it's still a good competitive story that I think sports fans will like. The next movie is a movie that blew me away just because I didn't think it was going to be very good. Den of Thieves, starring Gerard Butler. This movie also features O'Shea Jackson, who's Ice Cube's kid, and you'd recognize him from the movie Straight Outta Compton. But this was a really good movie about a bank robbery of the Federal Reserve, and I wasn't expecting much because it had Gerard Butler in it. And Gerard Butler hasn't really done anything worth a damn in a while. But this movie, can't suggest it enough. Now, at this point, I think I'm probably overblowing it. So you're going to go in expecting the greatest movie of all time, and you're not going to get that. But for an action movie about, a heist and all the things that happen with decent action in it, Den of Thieves is your movie. All right, finally. Why am I saying finally? We're halfway through this. Sin City. Sin City visually is stunning. It has 3 separate stories. It's a Frank Miller adapted movie from his graphic novels, but Sin City is so good. I have never seen the second one, and I actually own it and just never got around to it because I heard it wasn't good. But Sin City does that beautiful thing where they meld the 3 stories together to make one whole story whole. And just visually, this movie is incredible. And you get to see Carla Gugino looking damn good in this movie. I mean, what's up, girl? Good Will Hunting is a movie that won an Oscar, and it won an Oscar for a reason. It's the story of Will Hunting, who was played by Matt Damon, and this is the movie that really set Matt Damon and Ben Affleck up for stardom because they both wrote it together. But Will Hunting is a Boston kid who grew up in a tough neighborhood, who works as a janitor, but he is absolutely brilliant. And when he solves this incredibly complex math problem that was put up by a math teacher at, I think, Harvard or MIT, one of the two schools that won't even let me in the door, he ends up getting accepted in this program, but he's just so rough around the edges that it's his battle with dealing with his new career versus his old lifestyle and his relationship also with Robin Williams. And this movie is so good. For the very least, you should watch it for the "Do you like apples" scene. That's one of the best scenes in movie history, in my opinion. But this movie is a really, really good drama. I started to cough in my hand, as you saw, and then I went to the elbow wisely. Don't worry, I will scrub this place down. I don't believe I have coronavirus. Happy Time Murders. You're going to either love or hate this movie. Now, I know many people who hate this movie, but I also know many people who found this movie hysterical. I am one of the latter. I found this movie hysterical. This is Melissa McCarthy in a world where puppets and humans coexist. They don't really like each other, but they still live with each other. And Melissa McCarthy ends up working with a puppet investigator to solve a murder. And it's so incredibly crude at times. The humor is sophomoric, but I still was cracking up a lot of this movie. So go into this with some caution. If you know you don't like crude humor, you're not going to like this movie. But if you do like those kind of movies, you're going to find this movie hysterical. It got panned by the critics, and I kind of knew that going in it was going to, but I actually enjoyed it. And I'm saying that you should watch it if you're looking for a good comedy. The Holiday is probably the best out of all of these movies for a romantic comedy that you can watch with your loved one during this this coronavirus quarantine. This is follows two couples on holiday, and that's it. I can't tell you really why I love this movie, but it's just one of those guilty pleasures where you walk away and you got a smile on your face. If you're single, maybe it's not the best movie to watch, but if you're feeling lovey-dovey with your main squeeze there, The Holiday is a pretty good watch. The next movie is not the best movie in the world, but if you're really desperate, Hotel Artemis was a newer movie that came and went. It's okay. It's set in the future where this hotel is made for shady individuals, and a guy shows up one day after robbing a bank, and he's trying to get stitched up during these new LA riots and what's going on outside. As I said, it's an average movie. I put it on here just to mention it because I didn't hate it, but it's also one of those where this is the last-ditch resort. If you're really just hard up for everything, or everything I mentioned you've seen and it doesn't sound interesting and you haven't seen Hotel Artemis, check it out, I guess. The House with the Clock in Its Walls, I'm putting this on here just if you have kids because it's a movie that you can watch with your kids, but it stars Jack Black, and Jack Black ends up playing a warlock in this one who ends up taking in his nephew, and he lives in this house where there's a house that's cursed because it constantly has a clock in its walls, and the kid ends up trying to also become a warlock or a female witch, if you will. And it's a nice little kids movie that adults won't hate, probably. So if you don't know what to watch with your kids, House with the Clock in Its Walls is pretty entertaining. The Hummingbird Project, another one of these movies that it's kind of average, but I found the story interesting. So the story isn't based on a true story or anything like that, but Jesse Eisenberg plays a guy who wants to put a line from the Kansas City Stock Exchange to the New York Stock Exchange, and he's trying to do it behind the back of his boss. And the reason why he's doing this line, this Ethernet cable, is because he works with a company that buys stocks to sell you stocks. So the example that they use in the movie is, say I'm in England and I say, I will buy this stock for $10. Somebody races to New York to buy that stock for $10 to then sell to me in Kansas City for that $10. But if you're 1 second late, you're stuck with the stock because somebody's already beat you to it. And so it's kind of like a supermarket sweep situation, and he's trying to get this line because it'll make him a lot of money, and then shit goes down, and it's not the most satisfying ending in the world. I really was expecting it to climax in a way that was going to make me go, wow, this movie was great. Didn't happen, but I found the storyline to be pretty interesting. Jarhead is a very, very powerful movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal about what soldiers in Iraq were maybe going through. I don't know. I'm a bitch, so I can't take that lifestyle. Shout out to you if you've ever served and you went to Iraq and served this country. Thank you. I can't do it personally. I know my limitations. But what these guys had to go through just to stay sane, it might bore you because I did hear from people when this movie came out that it just didn't have enough action, and it really doesn't. But I still find it interesting with an important message. A Knight's Tale is a guilty pleasure starring Heath Ledger. This is a movie that you can just click on and you can check your brain at the door. You don't have to pay, close attention to it. It's a click and stick. If you've seen it, you might want to revisit it. It's just about this guy who wants to be a knight, and they don't really allow him to be knights because he's not a lord or savior, so he makes up this alter ego, and He starts winning all these jousts, but then of course there's another guy who is a lord in the night, and then there's a girl involved. And once again, not the most amazing movie. Guilty pleasure though, I do like it. The Legend of Bagger Vance was a sports movie starring Matt Damon and Will Smith about this golfer back in the 1920s, and he meets this. I don't really know how to describe Will Smith in this movie. He's the caddy, but he's a weird caddy, and this guy returned from war, and he's really messed up in the head from World War One. But he's also an incredible golfer, and they're having this golf match that he's going to participate in. I loved it. I've heard the book is better. Stop me if you've ever heard that statement before. The book is better, but I really like this movie, and if you're into sports, this is a decent flick. And by the way, Showtime has a lot of good sports stuff. Mad Max, the next one. Mad Max is exactly what our world is going to look like if the coronavirus lasts more than 2 months. Mile 22 is a movie that got panned by critics. I can't really figure out why, because I went into this movie expecting it to be trash. It was a lot better than I thought. I was pleasantly surprised with this Mark Wahlberg, Pete Berg movie. Pete Berg is the director of Hancock. He just did a movie called Spencer Confidential on Netflix. He did Friday Night Lights, but he works with Mark Wahlberg a lot. He's worked with him, I think, now 5 times, including Spencer Confidential. He also did Deepwater Horizon and Patriots Day. But this movie reminded me a lot of the movie 16 Blocks, if you've ever seen that. It reminded me a lot of that. If you haven't, it's basically about these soldiers that want to keep this diplomat safe they just need to get him from point A to point B, but these people don't want to allow that to happen, and the reason why. Actually, no, it's not a diplomat. It's an informant. So I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. Worst part of it was it had Ronda Rousey trying to act. She cannot act. Please stop putting her in stuff. It's painful. But she's in it for a hot second. And after that, I thought it was good. The perfect score is like if you mixed the new version of The Breakfast Club with a heist movie. It's about these 5 teenagers who are all from different backgrounds. There's the Breakfast Club angle of it, who want to break into the building where they make up the SAT so they can get a perfect score. This movie features a lot of future stars, including Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson in it. It was a Nickelodeon movie. MTV movie, but I liked it. And I think that if you're someone who is my age and you like The Breakfast Club, this is a decent movie to check out because it was very entertaining. Real Steel. The description of Real Steel is not great. It's set in a world where robots are the main attraction for sports. Nobody really watches boxing anymore. Everybody watches robots fighting. And the guy who's down on his luck, who's played by Hugh Jackman, ends up finding out that he had a kid, and he has to watch the kid for 3 months, and the kid ends up really getting into robot boxing and finding a robot, and this robot starts to win some fights, and they want to get to the main event, obviously, in this professional league, but the description's not doing it justice. It was actually shockingly a decent movie. Shockingly. A movie that's named Real Steel about robots fighting was surprisingly good. Scream. If you've never seen Scream, check it out. This movie reinvented horror movies because they flipped everything that horror movies did. They flipped it on its side. And they just changed the game. Scream is... I can't speak for Scream 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're rebooting Scream. But the original Scream, damn good. The next movie that I'll talk about is 7 Pounds. It stars Will Smith. And the best way I can describe this movie without giving a lot away is it's Will Smith trying to leave his legacy. Once again, I don't want to give a lot of this movie away, but I really, really enjoyed this movie. I actually searched this movie out probably 2 or 3 months ago to watch because it just popped into my head and I wanted to rewatch it. And I think it still holds up. It's a heavy movie, though. You're not going to laugh really at all about at this movie, but it's very, very good. And I think it makes you think, too. Stardust is another movie that if you like the fantasy realms, if you like the Lord of the Rings and those kind of movies, all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on every fantasy and sci-fi movie. But if you like those type of movies, I think you will like Stardust. I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies the year it came out. I think it came out in 2007. Once again, a movie that I went in with kind of low expectations, but basically this guy in this world ends up, it's our world, but he ends up seeing a shooting star. He goes and looks at it, and it's a girl, and there's pirates involved, and everyone's searching out for this quote-unquote this star. It's played by Claire Danes, and I adore this movie. I really like it. I get ripped for it all the time by my boys because it's called Stardust, but trust me, very, very good. Spotlight. I went to 13 years of Catholic school, so I have no time for child abuse scandals with the Catholic Church. I just, and this movie shined a glaring light on that. I mean, very, very powerful, serious movie that I love. It's so well done, and it is about the Boston Herald. I want to say the Boston Herald. I mean, all these newspapers, you forget their names, but one of the main newspapers in Boston uncovering the sexual abuse scandal in the Catholic Church in the city of Boston. And there's a lot of other good documentaries on this and shows, and The Keepers on Netflix is another good one if you're into this topic. And by into this topic, I mean if you went like me, who's 13 years of Catholic school, and you want to see exactly what the Catholic Church is covering up. But Spotlight does a great job of showing how serious this is and how much they were truly covering this up. This wasn't a few bad apples. This was a systematic problem with the Catholic Church. The Spotlight is tremendous. It was nominated for an Oscar for a reason. It might have actually won an Oscar. I don't remember. The Best of Enemies is a true story. If you're a fan of true stories, you're gonna maybe like this movie. I think because it was based on a true story, that's the only reason it's on the list. But it's a true story about this black rights activist and this former member of the Ku Klux Klan, played by Sam Worthington, and they had to meet in a something called a charrette. I had never heard of a charrette before, but it's basically a meeting where you come together and figure things out. It's usually called a meeting. But this movie was not as good as I thought. And I thought it was going to be a lot better. It's about these two people coming together to figure out if they're going to integrate the school along with the rest of the town, but how he ends up, not Sam Worthington, Rockwell, Sam Rockwell, I'm sorry, ends up changing his opinion on everything, and you end up seeing a new light of him. It's okay, not great. I think there are better movies on here, but I didn't walk away going, man, I wasted my time with it, so it ends up on the list. The Upside is the movie with Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston, and this is another movie that's based off a true story. It's based off a French story, a movie, real guy over in France who is a quadriplegic who hired this inner city kid to take care of him, and the friendship that bonded between them. It's funny at times, but I do think there are funnier movies on here, but it is worth watching. It's worth checking out. Walk Hard. While The Upside is worth checking out, Walk Hard is the movie that you absolutely have to watch. It is laugh out loud funny. It's one of the funniest movies that no one seems to talk about. And when you meet somebody that has seen Walk Hard, guaranteed they're going to praise Walk Hard's. They're going to praise Walk Hard. I don't know why I said they're going to praise. They're going to praise Walk Hard. And then I acted like there was going to be something else after that. They're just going to love this movie. This is, all of a sudden, I'm forgetting his name. John C. Reilly. There we go. Remembered it. I didn't want to stop the video. John C. Reilly, who, this is like a mockumentary on musicians and Walk the Line with Johnny Cash. But the one-liners in this, the storyline in this, John C. Reilly is hysterical in this movie. So while The Happy Time Murders isn't for everybody, The Upside is okay. I think there's another comedy that I mentioned in here. Walk Hard, can't suggest this movie enough. If you have not seen this movie, you will laugh your ass off. And finally, the movie 13. This was a little-known movie about this guy who ends up competing in this contest where rich people end up playing Russian roulette, and they bet on people who are going to die. So they get all these people in a room, and they all spin their guns, and you have all these rich people up in the balconies betting on who will die and who will live and who will be left, and whoever is left ends up winning a lot of money, and just the fucked up nature of it. It's a messed up movie, but I really enjoyed it. It'll kind of sit with you. All right, finally, docs. We'll get to the documentaries, because there are a lot of strong sports documentaries on Showtime. So the first one I'll talk about is the Bipolar Rock and Roller. This is a documentary on Mauro Ranallo, and you might not know the name Mauro Ranallo, but you've definitely heard Mauro Ranallo. And as soon as you hear some of his classic calls, you're going to go, oh, okay, I know that guy. But this guy is a world-class, one of the best play-by-play men, whether it be MMA, boxing, professional wrestling, sports, basketball, hockey, whatever it is. This guy is up there. The problem is he suffers from bipolar disorder, and it really, really messes with him. and exactly what he has to go through on a day-to-day basis while he's working at the top of his game. And this was an eye-opening documentary. I personally reached out to him on Twitter and just said, hey, like, loved it, loved your story, thanks for sharing it, because this is a very, very personal story, and he really opened up about it, about embarrassing moments in his life, and I was blown away by it. It was really, really good. So if you're a fan of professional wrestling, MMA, boxing, or just a sports fan, or just a human who likes human interest stories, Bipolar Rock and Roller, that's for you. Disgraced is the story, and sports fans might remember this. A bunch of years ago, at this point I think it's like 15 years ago, the Baylor basketball team had one teammate kill another, and this documentary goes into that. And I had forgotten about the story, and when you hear the name, you go, okay, I vaguely remember that. But just the messed up nature of two teammates who were friends, and one ended up killing another one, and it kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. Disgrace goes into it. It's very, very good. Gringo. This is not a sports documentary. It is the story of John McAfee. Who's John McAfee? He is the guy who, when you would sign on to your old Windows desktop and you'd have the McAfee security protection, that's John McAfee. But the issue with John McAfee is he's batshit insane, and he's like to the nth degree. And this goes into why he's batshit insane and all the crazy messed up shit he's gotten into, including running for president, which doesn't sound as far-fetched now that we look at who's in office. But I'm not getting political. Next up, One and Done. I'm a Sixers fan. I have season tickets, so I was all about this documentary. It's about Ben Simmons, who was the number 1 overall pick in, I think, the 2017 draft, 2016, 2017. But this guy was supposed to be the number 1 overall pick from the age of 10, and he went to LSU, and it follows his college career, or lack thereof, from going to LSU to the draft process to getting taken by the Sixers. And if you're a basketball fan, this is a really good one, and we have another one coming up. But the next one I'll talk about is prison fighters. So in Thailand, if you're in prison, you can actually fight for your freedom during a Muay Thai tournament. And that's what Prison Fighters follows, this Muay Thai tournament of these prisoners fighting for their freedom. We've seen this before in some movies. I just talked about Gamer, which I believe is on Amazon Prime or HBO, one of the two. But I just talked about that movie of, it's a similar ilk of prisoners fighting for their freedom. No, this actually does happen, though, and it happens in Thailand, and this documentary follows that. The Resurgence was the other basketball documentary, that I was referring to, and I said One and Done was good. We have another one coming up. Resurgence followed DeMarcus Cousins from getting traded from the Sacramento Kings to the New Orleans Pelicans to blowing out his Achilles to finally signing with the Golden State Warriors. He didn't get the championship that he was looking for, and he's still searching for it. Now, is he a member of the Lakers? He got released, but he's training with them. He's trying to be. He's like a volunteer. He's like Flavor Flav. He's like kind of a member, but not really, although they just axe Flavor Flav, so not the best example. But this documentary changed my opinion on DeMarcus Cousins completely. I didn't think he was as big of an asshole as everybody else might have, but I didn't necessarily love him. And after watching this, I was all about DeMarcus Cousins. I'm all about bringing Boogie to Philly. And then finally, Running for His Life. This documentary was about the football player Lawrence Phillips. If you're unaware of Lawrence Phillips, he was drafted 6th overall, and he was one of the biggest pieces of shit to enter the NFL. I really like this documentary. My issue with this documentary, though, was that some people in the documentary paint Lawrence Phillips out to be a good guy. He's not. He beat women. He's a piece of shit. Don't get it twisted. Just because he was nice to you in college doesn't mean he was a great guy. But just his career at Wisconsin, I think he went to Wisconsin. He either went to Wisconsin or Nebraska. I always get those two schools confused because they're so close together and they have the same colors. But he went to one of those two schools. I think it was Nebraska. But he was drafted 6th overall, never panned out, and also a complete piece of shit. But if you're a football fan, and I'm telling you, during this sports layoff, we do have a lot of good stuff to watch in the sports world. And there are some documentaries for you. And then series. There are a lot of Showtime series that I, frankly, haven't gotten into. And I can only suggest a couple of them. The first one is Homeland. I had not watched the new season of Homeland. To me, at this point, it's jumped the shark. After they killed off one of the main characters a couple seasons ago, I was kind of out on it. And also, Claire Danes, the main character, I think overacts a lot of times. I know she's won awards for it, but to me, she just overacts. But that doesn't take away from the first couple seasons of this show being tremendous. It follows Claire Danes, who works for the FBI, I think the CSI? No, CSI is crime scene investigators. CIA. There we go. Central Intelligence Agency. She either works for the Central Intelligence Agency or the FBI, but she gets a tip that a American soldier has been turned by the Taliban, and all the shit that goes on when they end up getting him home. So really good show, at least the first couple seasons. Just like the show Shameless. The show Shameless, I can't tell you why people like Shameless, because the description I would give is it's about a scumbag family in Chicago, but it is extremely entertaining. Now, I haven't watched the last 2 seasons because just like Homeland, I think it just fell off and jumped the shark and probably just should have ended a while ago. But up until a couple seasons ago, it was very good, holding strong. My one issue with it is one of the characters, a guy named Lip, looks like he was beat with the ugly stick, and he gets any girl he wants, and it just drives me up a wall because look at me. I mean, look at me. So, moving on. House of Lies was a good half-hour comedy starring Don Cheadle. Also had Kristen Bell in it. It's good for a couple seasons. I was entertained, but after a while, the storyline just got stagnant, and I just fell off of it. And the next show is Who is America, starring Sacha Baron Cohen. I love this show. I know a lot of people out there who don't like it because they think he went over the top. Shocker there, Sacha Baron Cohen going over the top. Never done before. But Sacha Baron Cohen basically goes around and pretends to be people and gets politicians to say really embarrassing things. And I was cracking up during it. To watch some of these politicians say the things they were saying was hysterical. And then finally, for sports fans out there, if you like Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, check out 60 Minute Sports. Unfortunately, this show ended a couple of years ago. But they do have, I think, season 5 and 4 up. And the stories still hold up. It's just like Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. It's about 3 or 4 stories that maybe you haven't heard of that will change your opinion on some things. But it's a good, interesting look at not necessarily the games, but the things outside of the games. So that's what's to watch on Showtime. If you were so inclined, go check out the video that I made on Amazon Prime and HBO. Please wash your hands. Subscribe to the channel. There's a button right up there. Hit the share button. You know, spread this. Spread this like Corona. All right? We're not distancing with this video. Let your friends know. And stay safe out there.